Very good morning to you all. So today we are going to discuss. I'm Mirappa Pattar. Today we are going to discuss information sources and services. Your course code is 222. So information sources and services is very important and the core point of studying the library and information science, because mainly we are dealing with the information sources. Okay. So here we have 4 blocks in information sources and services. The block number 1 deals with the documentary sources. Block number 2 deals with the non-documentary sources. And the block number 3, information services. And block number 4, information use and user studies. So in block number 1, documentary sources. So again, here we have 4 units. Categorization of sources is very important, and primary sources, secondary and tertiary sources. And the 4th one we are going to study, the criteria of evaluation is very important. Before we move on, let us see what is information. The set of facts and details about anything we get from someone or something is called information. The set of facts and details about anything we get from someone or something is called information. Information should be accurate, related, timely, and advantageous. So with this criteria, so if you go through information actually, okay. So in block number 1, as I told you, documentary sources. What are documentary sources? So with the advent of printing from mobile types in 1450s, the production of publication increased enormously, giving rise to different types of publications such as book, pamphlets, and periodicals. The handwritten documents like manuscripts, notes, and diaries continued to coexist along with the printed documents. All these formed the documentary sources of information. Non-documentary sources of information like the government and non-government offices, institutions, and human beings continued as a close allies of documentary sources. Documentary and non-documentary sources forms the entire amount of information sources. So in this block, we shall deal only with the documentary sources of information. Non-documentary sources of information will be deal in a separately. Okay. So information sources may also be divided as a published and unpublished sources. Published and unpublished sources can be further divided as a primary, secondary, and tertiary sources. So in the unit 1 of this block, first of all, published and unpublished sources are enumerated, and then how different authors have tried to categorize the documents is discussed along with the criteria they have followed for the categorization. In unit 2, primary sources comprising of research periodicals, technical reports, conference proceedings, patents, standards, theses, projects, reports, and official publications. Trade literature, laboratory notebooks, diaries, internal research reports, correspondence, personal files, etc. In unit 3, secondary and tertiary sources are deal with the secondary sources comprise of bibliographies, secondary periodicals like abstracting, indexing, and reviewing, and popular periodicals, etc. So, and reference books such as encyclopedias, dictionaries, handbooks, manuals, and yearbooks, directories, so etc. So all these are discussed with the adequate examples. In unit 4, deals with the criteria of evaluation. For all these sources, it should be remembered that evaluation of criteria vary from category to category, different type of sources, because whatever these sources are available, we have to evaluate whether the accuracy, as I told, timely, etc. Okay. So then comes, before we go that, so how can we explain the word sources? What exactly means sources? Sources means the book, person, place, point, or thing which originates the information about something. Source means the book, person, place, point, or thing which originates the information about something. According to the given definition as follows, sources means the book which gives information is a source, the person which gives information, the place which gives the information, the point whereby the information is obtained, the thing which generates the information. So there are different definitions you can see in your reference books. The book which gives the information, the person, any historians who gives the information, or any place, if you see the any place that gives some information to you. So like this, the sources means information sources and information resource. Recently, the resource term added to the information world. So there must be difference between the sources and resources. In the very beginning, it is better to be clear that about the concept information sources and information resources. The two terms, sources and resources, have started creating confusion ever since the term information resources has appeared on the scene. Prior to the emergence of this term, there was no confusion about the term. Information source as a this term used to connote a document or non-document. Example, an institution that provide information as a document, information, document or non-document, such as encyclopedia, specialist, etc. Where the sources of information, mostly librarians and information scientists, deal with the information sources. The term information resources pertains to information and communication technologies, especially to information management. Sometimes information management is referred as to as information resources management, information management. The resources are system support, including computers and telecommunications, processing data, images, etc. So like this, there is a difference between the information sources and resources. So let us go on first unit, categorization of sources. So here we will study documentary sources, non-documentary sources, printing sources, published and unpublished sources, non-print sources, unpublished sources, primary sources, secondary and tertiary sources. And the last newly added macro and micro sources, conventional and non-conventional sources. So there are different theories about categorization of sources by Georgian, Bond, and Smith, and Subramaniam, late, and Ranganathan also. So macro and micro, conventional and non-conventional documents are coming under this. So documentary sources means all sources in the form of documents are document sources. Books, treatises, monographs, textbooks, reference books, manuscripts, periodicals, patents, standard, thesis, conference document, okay? Then reports, articles, globes, diaries, letters, office files, CD-ROM recordings, and video recordings, database, computer files, laboratory notebooks. So these are the documentary source, comes under documentary sources. The term document has undergone sea change in the recent years and now includes books, periodicals, manuscript, everything. We, as I told you, videotapes, computer files, database, these are all with a little modification listed in the documentary sources. Okay. Then what are the non-documentary sources? So we give three types of non-documentary sources of information. Humans, for example, humans, organizations, and World Wide Web. Recently, the development has taken information. Humans under information professionals, They are giving some sources, consultants, consultants, experts, resource persons, extension workers. Their lectures or their whatever information they are saying, it may be not in a recordable, but it is a in a documentary sources of type of information produced by the humans, representative of different firms, technological gatekeepers, invisible college, as now we are going through common men, etc. And there are some non-documentary sources with the organizations, international agencies, government ministries and departments, research and development organizations, academic institutions, societies, publishing houses, press, broadcasting houses, libraries and information centers, museums, archives, etc. So there are print sources. All sources that are in print form are print sources. Books, periodicals, patents, standards, conference documents. These are all in a printed format. So these are called as a print sources. Then what are the non-print sources? Manuscripts, type or handwritten, thesis, project reports, typed, diaries, letters, office files, CD recordings, video recordings, database, computer files, e-publications. These are all non-print sources. Then again, published sources. These sources are documentary sources, both printed and non-printed. They are brought out by the publishers in a large number of copies, usually priced and for selling marketing purpose. Some of the examples like books, periodicals, as I told, patents, standard conference documents, CD recordings, unpublished also same thing as printed and non-printed sources, manuscripts, thesis, diaries, office laboratories, etc. Okay. So as we are mainly dealing with the primary sources, secondary sources, and tertiary sources. A source will be considered as a primary source in case it carries newly generated information which has not existed, and the new information produce the original work of a research or a new interpretation of already known facts. The document is the first and often the only published, the fresh one. So we categorize this kind of sources in a primary sources of information. Then comes secondary sources, a source which is more or less completely dependent on primary sources for its existence in a secondary sources. Information in a secondary sources is organized and arranged according to a definite plan. So indexing and abstracting periodicals, later we will discuss that one. So are one of the examples of the secondary sources. Then comes tertiary sources, a source that is entirely dependent on secondary sources or primary and secondary sources for its existence in a tertiary sources. Sources like guides to reference sources and bibliography and of bibliographies are examples of the tertiary sources. Okay. So macro and micro documents, the recent one added. When a work expressing macro thought is embodied into a document all by itself called a macro document. A book may be considered as a macro document. And what is micro document? A work expressing micro thought, say a journal article is usually not embodied into a document all by itself. Several micro documents comprise a macro document when they are printed together in the macro document. Take for example, September 2010 issue of the Annals of Library and Information Studies. In this particular issue, there are 15 different articles. Each of the article is a micro document. Sorry, there was some disturbance. So just I close that. So the conventional and non-conventional documents. A conventional document is one in which a paper forms the basic material on which recording is done by phonetic symbols, forming the script of an articulate, natural or artificial language, or a non-conventional script, such as Braille for blind people there, or a non-phonetic symbols such as drawings. They are giving some kind of informations. Okay, the simply by writing these documents are used for the communication of thought content. Some example conventional documents are journals, serials, books, articles, braille books, stenographs. Okay, they are denoting some symbols, and that symbol describes some coded information there. So these are all conventional documents. And what are the non-conventional documents? Yeah, it's all. Which is reproduced from a conventional document either on a paper, for example, a photocopy, or on any other non-paper material, example, microfilms. Sometimes these documents are highly reduced in size. Example, microfiche requires a device for reading the particular microfilm or these things. So which records sound or non-paper media? Gramophones record, you can say, sound and picture together on a non-paper media, example, AV materials, video recordings, simply picture and non-paper media. So in 6 institutions as a sources of information, there are institutions which are producing information sources. So in this we will study the objectives, introduction, as well as the government ministries and department. They are giving some sources of information, international agencies, UNESCO, and you can say anything, R&D organizations, DRDO, any there are research oriented BHL or any other institutions, academic institutions, universities and university publications, learned societies. There are some societies which are giving best so producing the sources of information, and the publishing houses, the printing press, you can say any book published press. Okay, and the broadcasting stations, your radio and FM radio as usual you are listening, and museums in your cities. They are giving some kind of information. If you go to Dharwad Science Museum there, so we'll study something that symbolize. There are some symbols and other things that explains to you something about that particular aspects. And archives, non-government organizations, media as a sources of information. So mass media. Okay, in the mass media you will study in the unit 7 characteristics, scopes and functions of the mass media, positive influences and the negative influences of that media, components of a mass media, print media, radio broadcasting, television, recording such as the CD, DVDs, motion films, and their accessibility and availability. So advertisements, public relations. Yeah, so exactly what is the Indian scenario in media as a sources of information? Recently, as you all witnessed, the medias, they are if you run behind one particular aspect, they won't stop until that reach to some concerned persons. Okay, so then we will see the information services, information sources and services. As we are going through this information sources, we have studied there are different types of categorization of information sources. Now we'll move on to the services. So in the block number 3, you are going to study the information services. Of these course, we will discuss about the variety of information services which libraries and information centers providing to meet the information needs of the various categories of users. Very important. The information centers providing to meet the information needs of various categories of users, because a user approaching to you not only with some particular, there are variety of users, they wanted to see different kind of informations. There is no one accurate, so everybody is not asking about only the one particular subject information. Their needs may be vary. So in that context, we have to study some services, because if you go to the public library, there the approach of public is different, because all walks of life people will come to the library. They will ask a variety of information. Someone ask novels, and somebody ask competitive exams related books. Somebody will ask you the uh, uh, any senior citizens, or if children comes, their approach of information is different. Like this, if you go to the academic institution, there also their approach to the library for a different purpose. Someone will be approaching the for research purpose, and someone approaching with some information study. Okay, like this, these in a special library, if you go to the any BARC and other DRDO, and their scientists will approach for their research related information. So in the information services, we have information service as an overview. Unit 8 will deal with that. Types of services, reference services and current awareness services, literature search and database. So information use and user studies also will be discussed in this services. So unit 11, 12, 13, 14 will discuss the importance of users education for the new entrance to the library. If you go to any public library or academic library, you will seek the information to the librarian. So where, how the books are organized, and so where there's classified, where they will get their needed information. Like this, their approach may be different. And on user studies, you will come to study the information center, the various their seeking behavior of needs and requirements of the users. And you will also study the conducting information user studies in the libraries, and how to conduct it. And there are different approaches to various types of studies. For example, user based and profession based, source based, subject based, etc. Like this. So you have to study the needs and requirements of the users. The marketing of information service is also the new trend has taken. So it explains the meaning of the marketing and also the need of implement it is in the library and information centers area. So as we already discussed, primary sources are the informative sources, such generate the information that does not exist already. Primary sources break out the new information. Primary sources provide the original information or ideas. Primary sources gives you a unorganized information. Okay. Secondary sources, as we discussed, when the information breaks out from the primary sources, the secondary sources gather the information and polish it. Very important difference between the primary and the secondary. This one here, the secondary sources have organized information, because they are not just fresh hand, they are polished and they are moderate and published there. Secondary sources make the information easy to understand. Secondary sources consist already published information instead of a new one. Example that. So, and tertiary sources are made upon the primary and secondary sources. Sources do not consist a subjective knowledge. So tertiary sources are totally based on facts. Sources are the summarize of a particular topics. Sources are squeezed from the informations. And service is a derived from the word serve. Okay, service is a set of those activities which anyone does to facilitate his or her customers or users some services have to be paid, as we will you can discuss, you can study in marketing of information sources, but some are freely available. So in libraries also, all the services of users and readers are free. Okay, the information services, all these services which provide the information about the specific topic subject are called information services. Information service obtained information, modify, organize, and then categorize the information in a specific sections, so which can be easily accessible by the readers. Information service are not limited, but have endless boundaries, uh, because you cannot limit the service here. When you use the word service, so it is endless and endless boundaries. So you cannot just drop the reader by giving just his information. You can further go and extend, help him to go for the research work. The places where information is provided are called information centers. Okay, so with this we will conclude the information sources and service. Okay, uh, so with this I will end up today with the information sources and service. In the next class I'll tell the madam regarding the next